Christmas morning at the Thompson family home always felt like a performance. The perfectly decorated tree, the expensive wrapping paper, the careful orchestration of gift-giving designed to showcase just how successful my parents had become. This year, however, the performance was about to take an unexpected turn. I arrived at 9 a.m. sharp as tradition demanded, carrying a small bag of gifts for everyone. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, and classical music played softly in the background. My mother, Patricia, was already in full hostess mode, ensuring everyone had coffee and that the photographer she'd hired could capture every perfect moment. "Maya, you're here," she said, barely looking up from arranging pastries on the dining room table. "Everyone's in the living room. We're just waiting for your Uncle Robert to arrive, then we'll start opening gifts." I made my way to the living room where my father, David, was holding court near the fireplace. My brother Marcus and his wife Jennifer were sitting on the couch with their two young children, while my sister Sophia was perched elegantly in her usual spot near the window. Everyone was dressed in their Christmas best, designer sweaters, expensive jewelry, the kind of understated luxury that screamed old money. I'd chosen my outfit carefully too, though for different reasons. Simple black jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, and minimal jewelry. To my family, I looked like someone who was trying her best with limited resources. In reality, every piece I wore cost more than most people's monthly rent, but brands they wouldn't recognize. "Paya," Sophia called out, waving me over. "Come sit with us. Dad's been telling everyone about the new yacht club membership." I settled into an empty chair and listened as my father described his latest status symbol acquisition. The conversation flowed around me: stock portfolios, vacation homes, private school tuition for the grandchildren. The usual topics that reinforced the family hierarchy, with my parents at the top and me, the struggling artist, at the bottom. Uncle Robert arrived promptly at 9:30, completing our family gathering. He greeted everyone warmly, making his usual jokes about traffic and weather, before settling into his favorite armchair. "Now that we're all here," my father announced, "let's begin our Christmas tradition." The gift exchange in the Thompson family followed a strict protocol. Dad would call each person forward to receive their presents while the photographer captured the moment. It was part family bonding, part social media content creation. "Marcus, come forward," Dad called, his voice filled with paternal pride. My brother stood and approached the tree where a large pile of beautifully wrapped boxes waited. Dad handed him the first package with a flourish. "For our successful son and his beautiful family, a little something to help with that new house in Greenwich." Marcus unwrapped a set of keys tied with a silver ribbon. "Dad, you didn't. The down payment for the house you've been looking at. $200,000. Consider it an early inheritance." The room erupted in congratulations. Jennifer started crying, the children clapped, and the photographer captured every emotional moment. I smiled and applauded along with everyone else, genuinely happy for Marcus despite everything. "Sophia, your turn," Dad continued. My sister glided forward, her designer dress perfectly coordinated with the Christmas color scheme. Dad handed her a small Tiffany box. "For our brilliant daughter who just made partner at the law firm." Sophia opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond necklace. "Dad, it's gorgeous." $50,000, he announced proudly. "Only the best for our little legal eagle." More applause, more photos, more celebration. Uncle Robert received a vintage wine collection worth $20,000. Even the grandchildren got lavish gifts: premium electronics, designer clothes, and enrollment in expensive summer camps. I remained in my chair watching the performance unfold, waiting for my turn that I knew would never come. Finally, Dad looked around the room with an exaggerated expression of completion. "Well, I think that covers everyone." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room turned toward me, then back to Dad, then to me again. The photographer lowered her camera, sensing the shift in energy. "Dad," Sophia said quietly, "what about Maya?" My father's expression hardened. He looked directly at me, his voice carrying across the room with deliberate clarity. "Some people don't deserve presents." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. I felt the familiar sting of public humiliation, the same feeling I'd experienced countless times growing up when my achievements were dismissed and my choices criticized. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, that's..." "No, Marcus," Dad interrupted. "Maya made her choices. She dropped out of a perfectly good business program to pursue art. She turned down a job at my firm to paint pictures. She's 32 years old and still hasn't figured out how to be a responsible adult. Why should we reward failure? My mother nodded in agreement. We've supported her long enough. Maybe it's time for some tough love. The room was completely silent except for the soft classical music still playing in the background. I could see the discomfort on everyone's faces, the awkwardness of witnessing family cruelty disguised as life lessons. I smiled calmly and pulled out my phone. "That's fine, Dad," I said, my voice steady and pleasant. "I understand your position." I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed, then hit dial. The phone rang twice before someone answered. "Mr. Patterson? This is Maya Thompson. I hope you're enjoying Christmas morning with your family." "Yes, I'm calling about the Thompson mortgage account. Actually, I need to discuss some changes to the payment structure." My father's face went white. "Maya, what are you doing?" I held up one finger, continuing my conversation. "Yes, that's correct. I've been covering the monthly payments for the past 18 months through Pinnacle Holdings. No, I'd like to discontinue that arrangement effective immediately. Yes, I understand they'll receive notice of the change within 24 hours. I ended the call and looked up at my family's shocked faces. "What was that about?" my mother demanded. Before I could answer, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and smiled. "It's your mortgage company," I said pleasantly. "They probably want to discuss your account status." Dad fumbled for his own phone, his hands shaking slightly as he answered. "Hello? Yes, this is David Thompson. What do you mean changes to our account?" I watched as the color drained from his face while he listened to the voice on the other end. "But that's impossible," he said. "We've never missed a payment. What do you mean someone else has been paying?" I stood up and walked to the center of the room where all the discarded wrapping paper lay scattered around the Christmas tree. "Dad, while you were explaining to everyone why I don't deserve presents, I thought this might be a good time to clear up some misconceptions about my financial situation." "Maya, what have you done?" Sophia whispered. "Nothing dramatic," I replied. "I just stopped paying your mortgage. And your car payments. And the monthly fees for your yacht club membership. And the insurance premiums on this house." The room was completely silent except for Dad's continued conversation with the mortgage company, his voice growing more panicked with each exchange. "You see," I continued, "while you've all been assuming I'm struggling to make ends meet as an artist, I've actually been running a somewhat successful business. Pinnacle Holdings. Maybe you've heard of it." Uncle Robert's eyes widened. "Pinnacle Holdings. The investment firm? That's the one. We manage about $4 billion in assets across various sectors. Real estate, technology, energy, pharmaceuticals. I started it 8 years ago with the money I made selling my first painting." My mother was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "That's impossible. You live in that tiny apartment." "I live in that tiny apartment because I like it. It's quiet, it's private, and it's paid for. Just like this house was until about 5 minutes ago." Dad finally ended his call, his face ashen. They say you've been paying our mortgage for 18 months. That without your payments, we're 3 months behind and facing foreclosure." "That's correct," I confirmed. "You defaulted on your mortgage 2 years ago when Dad's investment firm lost that big client. Rather than let you lose the house, I had Pinnacle Holdings take over the payments. Anonymously, of course." "But why?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible. "Because despite everything, you're my family. Even when you treat me like a disappointment, even when you publicly humiliate me at Christmas dinner, even when you decide I don't deserve presents, you're still my family." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder of documents. "But I'm tired of being treated like a charity case by people who are actually living on my charity." I opened the folder and began reading. David Thompson, mortgage payments covered by Pinnacle Holdings, $347,000. Patricia Thompson, car lease payments, $23,000. Marcus Thompson, private school tuition for both children, $78,000. Sophia Thompson, law school loan payments, $45,000. Each name, each amount, each revelation hit the room like a physical blow. In total, over the past 18 months, I've quietly covered $612,000 in family expenses because I believed in taking care of the people I love. Dad slumped into his chair, the weight of his words and actions finally sinking in. We had no idea." "Of course you didn't. Because none of you ever asked about my life. You made assumptions based on my clothes, my apartment, my career choices. You decided I was failing and never bothered to look deeper. I walked over to the Christmas tree and picked up one of the discarded gift boxes, turning it over in my hands. You want to know about presents, Dad? Last month, I donated $2 million to the Children's Hospital downtown. They're naming the new art therapy wing after our family. The Thompson Wing. I thought you'd be proud to have our name associated with helping sick children express themselves through creativity. Tears were streaming down my mother's face. Oh, Maya. But here's the thing about presents, I continued. The best ones aren't about showing off wealth or status. They're about understanding what someone truly needs and providing it out of love. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. So I do have a present for you, Dad. All of you, actually. I handed him the package, which he opened with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. What is this? He asked. It's a deed. To this house. As of yesterday, Pinnacle Holdings owns it outright. Consider the mortgage officially paid off. The silence was deafening. But there's more, I said, pulling out additional documents. Marcus, here's the deed to that Greenwich house you wanted. It's yours free and clear. Sophia, here's a trust fund that will cover your children's education through graduate school. Mom, here's the title to that car you've been leasing. I distributed the papers around the room, watching as each family member realized the magnitude of what I'd done. And Uncle Robert, I said, turning to my father's brother, here's something special for you. Remember that small accounting firm you've been trying to buy for the past 5 years? Consider it an early retirement gift. Uncle Robert stared at the documents in his hands, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Maya, my father finally managed, this is millions of dollars. 7.3 million to be exact, I confirmed. Consider it my Christmas present to the family. But why? Sophia asked through her tears. After everything we said, everything we did. I smiled and settled back into my chair. Because that's what family does. We take care of each other even when we don't deserve it. Even when we're cruel and judgmental and wrong about each other. The photographer, who had been standing frozen in the corner, quietly started packing up her equipment, recognizing that this was no longer the kind of Christmas morning that would make it into the family newsletter. There is one condition, I added, causing everyone to look up sharply. What kind of condition? Dad asked nervously. Sunday dinners. Once a month at my apartment. No photographers, no performance, no discussion of money or status. Just family talking about things that actually matter. Of course, Marcus said immediately. Anything you want. And Dad, I continued, looking directly at my father, I'd like you to visit the art therapy wing at the Children's Hospital. Spend some time with the kids, see what they're creating. Maybe you'll understand why I chose art over business. My father nodded, tears finally appearing in his eyes. Maya, I'm so sorry. The things I said, the way we've treated you. You're forgiven, I said simply. But it stops now. No more assumptions, no more public humiliation, no more deciding who deserves what based on your narrow definition of success. My mother stood up and walked over to me, her designer dress wrinkled from sitting on the floor. Can you ever forgive us? We've been such fools. I stood and embraced her, feeling the tension of years of disappointment and judgment finally beginning to dissolve. We're family, Mom. We'll figure it out. The rest of Christmas morning passed in a blur of tears, apologies, and tentative conversations about starting over. The expensive gifts that had seemed so important an hour earlier were forgotten in favor of something much more valuable. The possibility of genuine understanding and respect. As I prepared to leave that afternoon, Dad approached me near the front door. Maya, I need you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. Not just the money, but the way you handled this whole situation. You could have destroyed us, and instead you saved us. Dad, I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to see me. I see you now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And I'm ashamed it took this long. I hugged him goodbye, feeling like I was embracing my father for the first time in years. As I drove home to my tiny apartment, I reflected on the morning's events. The money I'd spent was significant but not devastating to my business. More importantly, I'd finally spoken my truth to the people who mattered most. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Thank you for the most valuable Christmas gift ever. The chance to know who my sister really is. I smiled and typed back, "See you at Sunday dinner next month?" Her response came immediately, "Wouldn't miss it." And Maya? "I'm bringing homemade cookies, not something from that expensive bakery." For the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to spending time with my family. Sometimes the best present you can give someone is the opportunity to be better than they thought possible. That evening, I sat in my small living room with a cup of tea and my sketch pad, thinking about the children I'd met at the hospital art therapy sessions. Tomorrow, I'd call the wing coordinator and arrange for my family to visit. It was time they understood that success wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was about using whatever resources you had to make the world a little bit better. The real gift wasn't the millions of dollars I'd given them that morning. It was the chance for all of us to build something new together, something based on love and understanding instead of judgment and assumptions. My phone rang and I saw it was Marcus calling. "Maya, I just wanted to thank you again for everything today. But I also wanted to ask, would it be okay if I brought the kids to your place sometimes? They've been asking about their Aunt Maya who makes beautiful paintings." "I'd love that," I said, feeling my heart warm at the thought of my niece and nephew seeing my studio. "And Maya? Next Christmas we're doing things differently. No photographer, no performance. Just family." "I'd like that very much." As I hung up the phone, I realized that sometimes the most expensive gifts are the ones that don't cost anything at all. Like forgiveness, understanding, and the chance to start over with the people you love. The business empire I'd built was impressive, but the family relationships I was rebuilding were priceless.